but because of his illegitimacy, he has no right to sign agreements. If he wants to participate in the negotiations, I'll assign people to do it. Slammed doors reluctantly inspected the car industry and prepared to sign documents on the results of negotiations with Ukraine. Jakub Koreba, a doctoral candidate in political science. Jakub, hello. Jakub, let's start with Putin's interview with Zarubin yesterday discussing the negotiations and Zelensky. The terrorist president is sure that the war in Ukraine can be over in 1 to 2 months if partner countries stop helping Ukraine. Of course, Putin is sure that Ukraine will run out of money and ammunition during this period, and then negotiations will begin. Who is targeted by the rhetoric that the West should not support Ukraine? If Putin believes in an early end to the war, why? When you show the Russian leader, you immediately think of barracks anecdotes, which you cannot tell in the presence of a smart and stylish lady. You can recognize a man by the way he finishes, not by the way he starts.
Анекдоты, которые нельзя рассказывать в присутствии умной, красивой, стильной и деликатной дамы, но все-таки, вы знаете, мужчину можно как бы познать, не потом как начинает, а потом как заканчивает.
How this character ends up, it's clear there.
Данный персонаж, мне кажется, там реально все видно.
Putin can be shown as the epitome of what Russia has become. Look at the face with which he looks at the Russian car industry. With what kind of face does he look at the people he made the elite of Russia? It's like a wax doll from Madame Tussauds. Look at the face of a senile, depressed, retarded grandfather. He brought himself, his entourage, Russia, and its people to this state. Everyone there is like him. I talk to people and realize that they are in the same condition. Especially in the elite, the rest of us have nothing to lose. The elite have lost their entire way of life because of Putin and his policies. There is money, but nothing to spend it on. They wanted to restore the Soviet Union, but they restored it in its worst forms. As for your question, we're already going from Sacha Baron Cohen to Monty Python. It's already UNESCO, it's just surreal. Logically, it's up to the one who started to finish. If he wants to end the war, then he should end it. If he doesn't end the war, then he doesn't want to end it. As long as Russia has the resources, the war will continue in one form: active, passive, kinetic, or hybrid. Until Russia changes leadership with a different mindset, the country will remain expansive, militaristic, and imperialist.
Во главе России не будут стоять другие люди с другим мышлением, она всегда будет экспансивной, милитаристской, империалистской и милитаристской страной.
In my opinion, they will not change. You can only change them from the outside. This country needs to be reformatted like Germany, Japan, and other countries, because they don't have that strength inside. They don't have the mindset to change. If they want to end the war, let them end it. After all, they're the ones who started it, and it's clearly in their best interest. I'd like to see them come out of the war as losers. I don't want to see a deal that allows them to save face and present the end of the war as their victory. If they want to, let them finish it. If they don't want to, it will continue. Ukraine has already won. They haven't achieved a single strategic goal. Even the tactical goals fell short. Look, even the tactical objectives. The Kiev operation is a complete failure. Sumy, Chernigov, Kherson failure. Kharkiv failed. Donbass failed. Out of 10 tactical targets, they achieved at most 2, more like 1.5. If they keep going, they lose. I'm fine with that. It's in their best interest to finish it. If they're maniacs and want to suffer, I won't stand in their way. Jacob, you brought up the Kiev operation. In 2022, Putin said some European leaders argued that it was impossible for Ukraine to sign a peace treaty with a gun to its temple. It was necessary to pull troops away from Kiev. Putin said that deception was entirely possible. For decades, Russia has been lied to all the time. We agreed to withdraw our troops from near Kiev to avoid serious bloodshed. Then we saw Bucha. If Russia has been deceived for decades, why would it believe the deception again, as Putin said in 2022? If Russia is so afraid of deception, why is it violating its own agreements, starting with the Budapest Memorandum? They often violate their agreements. You know them better than we do. I don't know of any treaty that Russia has not broken in the last 300 years. They always violate, because they don't understand what a contract is in the Western European sense. They believe that a contract is a right, seeing it from a gangster's point of view. When they can, they don't enforce them, they don't honor them, they violate them. They have always been like that. It is surprising how Ukrainian leaders signed the Budapest Memorandum, but this is a topic for another conversation, rather after the war. Everything is clear about the Russians. I don't understand the Ukrainian motivation. I basically try to avoid commenting inside Ukrainian affairs. Russians violate everything and always. But what's interesting about your question is different. He has signed off that he is acting on his own, and his advisors, ministers, officials, Russian intelligence, and the foreign ministry are incompetent too. Incompetent, thieving, and doing the wrong thing. They say they've been cheated. When I went there and interacted with them, I said, okay, guys, if you call the West's policies deception, I can agree with these categories and reason within them. If you call the policies of Europe and the US a deception, then why are you going along with it? Why are you playing this game? They carried their idiocy to the end and made a most ruinous mistake for themselves. I'm not going to say politically correct. If they attacked another post-Soviet country, it wouldn't mean their end. There would be a way out of this, but an attack on Ukraine is the end of Russia. Moral compromise of their entire rhetoric and ideology. The moral compromise of not only the state and the army, but their entire culture, religion, spirituality, values, and staples. If they had attacked another country, the world could have turned a blind eye, and the consequences would not have been as severe. Attacking Georgia was no big deal. In their ideology, they have attacked a country that will destroy them. Ukraine has the moral strength and physical means to kick the Russians out of Europe, which is what is happening. I look at my country, where they couldn't solve several mental problems for 30 years. You have solved our problems and saved us and several other countries in Europe from major troubles. This is the demoralizing influence of the Russian presence. The Russian factor that has always pulled us back. Why have we been a second-class Europe for 300 years? Because there was Russian money, power, soldiers, gas, oil, interests, banks, language, and so on. Russian language is not associated with Russians. In Poland, the Russian language is associated with Ukrainians. In any Polish city, Russian is not associated with Russians. This is the Russian language. It belongs to Ukraine. No one associates him with a Russian. They gave it to themselves by their own idiocy. It's unbelievable, as all strategic problems are. The defense capability of the Baltic states is our main strategic problem. What did we fail to achieve in 30 years after Finland joined NATO? We're shutting down Kronstadt, shutting down Baltiisk. They did it all. I don't know what forces are at work there, but my guess is that it's ignorance, corruption, and nihilism pushing self-delusion. It's like Chekhov. You laugh at whom you laugh at yourself. According to the quote you cited, they have decided in their mediatism to go all the way. Jacob Putin has repeated several times that the negotiations the EU and US insist on are impossible. Putin emphasized that Zelensky is an illegitimate leader and cannot lift the ban on talks with Russia. I have questions for various Ukrainian politicians, but I will ask them after the war. That's your business. I'm not a Ukrainian citizen, but for the sake of political science interest, we can discuss after the war. Including Zelensky. But he is elected. People voted in real elections. It was a tough fight, and Putin never participated in the elections. And he will determine who is legitimate, who is not legitimate. And who gave him the right to do that? He thinks the election is some kind of school matinee. It's just pretty decorations and ritualistic gestures. Let's not tie the evaluation of this process to the opinion of someone outside the narrative and our values. Elections are a mechanism invented 2,500 years ago in Greece to govern the state. The mechanism is 2,500 years old. It's not perfect, but as Churchill said, all others are worse. When Putin evaluates the quality of Ukrainians and politicians, it's like evaluating other people's wives. You shouldn't confuse the two things. Let's not mix Ukraine as a democratic and civilized country with Russia. In this case, it's hard to focus on it. I only have obscene comparisons. Jakub, what is the purpose of Putin talking about illegitimacy again? He says this because he himself realizes his and Lukashenko's illegitimacy. All of his allies are illegitimate. Is there any decent country that is friends with Russia? I don't know. All these countries have the Ayatollahs, Kim, Assad, everything. All his friends, not chosen by anyone, are trembling. They live every day in fear of being torn down. In our country or yours, presidents are changed in elections. There is a procedure invented by our Greek ancestors. The procedure isn't perfect. It's better than imprisoning him like Gaddafi or hanging him like Saddam. The Russians and their friends have no such procedure. These people realize that to lose power is to lose your life, your money, your family, just like in Iraq or Libya. Every day, Putin trembles in fear of being taken down because he realizes his illegitimacy. The change of power in Russia will happen as always. He's jealous because he wants the pluses of dictatorship, but without its minuses. He doesn't want the disadvantages of democracy, but he wants its advantages so that the power changes like in Ukraine. He realizes this and projects his phobias and fears onto other countries. It's a normal mechanism, especially since they realize it's up and coming and it's ending. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Putin had reiterated his position and said he did not understand how one could succumb to the Russian agenda. I'm fascinated by Ukraine, especially the last 3 years. It was the first and probably the only time I cheated my parents to go to Ukraine. I was in high school. I wasn't 18. And to get to Lviv, we had to have an older friend with us because my parents wouldn't let me in. I wanted to see this country so badly, and for 25 years now, Ukraine has delighted me. I don't see why giving in to the Russian agenda. Stop thinking about them. Think about yourself, Europe, and your neighbors. Why comment on that? They're saying this to get Zelensky to comment. They do it so we talk about it. They have no other subject. They are substituting a real agenda because there is no power struggle politics in Russia. They live the lives of others. They want to impose the worldview that everywhere is bad and everyone is the same. I understand a little about Russian propaganda. For 7 years, I've been watching this. They don't try to convince that they are right or that they have the truth. They are trying to enforce the view that everywhere is bad. They want us to debate them and inject them into their agenda. Why comment on Putin? You have other partners and topics to talk about. They're to be forgotten. In Poland, we treat them as a bad neighbor. You don't want a drunken troublemaker as a guest. You won't discuss tea, fishing, or vacations with him. They need to be seen as an unpleasant element of our reality. Like a forced evil, they're around, but you have to take steps to avoid their effects. Why discuss them in terms of rationality or the possibility of change? They have proven that you can't do anything with them. If President Zelensky says he's disappointed or feels dissonance, what dissonance? There is no dissonance with the Russians? The question is what we are talking about, for example, Russian propaganda. We have a reaction, but need to refute and not confirm it. When did they tell the truth? When Putin or my former Russian propaganda colleagues told the truth. Then you have to sit around all day and refute it. Their goal is to have us do only them. There are many meaningful things in Ukraine, Poland, and other countries liberated from Russian occupation. We have many unresolved problems because we allow the Russian agenda, phraseology, and rhetoric to be imposed. We need to mind our own business, not think it's their fault. Yes, they are at fault, but admitting it to the world will do nothing for the world. We need to deal with the issues and never hope to get anywhere with the Russians. We in Poland made this decision a long time ago. With this mindset, we joined NATO and the EU and got divorced pretty well. We are the third army in NATO in 3 years, from the 8th to the 3rd. Not bad. That's because we were preoccupied with ourselves, not thinking about what Putin said. If I can advise you, Jakub, we have a position in Ukraine. There's nothing to talk about with the Russians. They're terrorists, and we do not impose their agenda. We have a disinformation center. It's a structure that refutes fakes and propaganda, but it's a dead end. You have to refute everything they say. There is a lot of news in the information field, and people need to be explained. This center should not deal with Russians, but with people in Ukraine or with Ukrainian passports who broadcast Russian values and interests. There are many such people in all our countries, so such centers are needed not to discuss Russian lies, but to fight their influence. About how their lies are broadcast through the paid or traitors within our countries and elites. Do you notice the activation of such people among Ukrainians? I don't want to name names, but you have probably noticed that such people have begun to openly broadcast a pro-Russian position. Ukraine's independence is worthless, and secession from the USSR is a mistake. The war with Russia is our fault. A Ukrainian citizen said. Opposition should be directed at such people. Such people should be dealt with by the SBU at the very least. I am humane and believe that the SBU is the last place to go. People like this discredit themselves. We need to dissect this. This is the preparation of a Russian relapse inside Ukraine. They realize they've lost the war, so they put all their energies into internal agency. In Poland, they are waging hybrid warfare. Sabotage is taking place because they realize that we will not accept their ideology. In Ukraine, they continue promoting pro-Russian ideology through their assets. Or people who, for various reasons, such as narcissism or hurt ambition, decided to serve Russian interests. Such people are becoming active in Ukraine, and it is worth paying attention to, because on the front you won and did not allow them to solve a single problem. Can you win a war against an internal enemy? That's the question for me. I ask viewers to leave their thoughts in the comments below the video. Thank you. Jakub Kareba, PhD in political science, has been in touch with us. Have a nice, productive day. See you later.